Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on H&H. On the H&H Chevrolet stage, I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
Hey, man.
We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. Of course, we're also on YouTube and Twitter as well. Good morning, and what a great day to be a Nebraska Cornhusker or a Cornhusker fan.
I thought it was December 25th for a moment.
Listen, Christmas came early, and it was December 11th, 2023.
Who had that on their bingo card?
Goodness. So we're talking to Steve Wiltfong yesterday morning, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think he held out on us because from what I understand the timing of this, I think that crystal ball for Steve Wiltfong came in shortly after he found out what was going on. And if you are not as obsessed with Twitter as we are, that's okay, and your mental health is probably better for it. But what we're talking about is that about 12 to 14 hours ago, some incredible rumors that appear to be more than just rumors, and I'll get into that in a little bit, that Dylan Raiola is not only interested in Nebraska, not only is visiting Nebraska this weekend, I believe he is coming to Nebraska. And I will explain how I got there, okay? So yesterday afternoon, probably about 5 or 6 p.m.,
it's about right,
I start getting some very strange text messages. And I'm in a very weird spot in the sports media landscape because I am not a reporter. I don't break news. I've never reported anything. That's not my job. That's not what I do, right? So even if something did land in my lap, I wouldn't totally know how to handle it. I don't have a classic journalism background, although did write for the Hoofbeat for good old Millard North back in the day. But speaking of Millard North, we're going to talk to Allen Burrell, the new Millard North football coach at 7:45. But so I started getting some strange text messages yesterday about, like, hey, is this Dylan Raiola thing real? Have you heard about this? What do you know? And so my process is when people start asking me questions I don't understand, that's when I start talking to the people who would know.
You ask more questions.
Yeah, I go ask questions of the people that in my life that are more well informed than I am. So I start sending some texts out, and here's what I'm allowed to say that I know for sure. That Dylan Raiola, obviously he's coming to visit Nebraska. What I found this part out before the visit was made official was that he is in contact with current Husker recruits doing his due diligence on Nebraska. Found that out for sure, was told that I could say that out loud on the air. That's the first indication that I got that I was like, oh, this thing might be real, right? Shortly after that, I believe I've got my timing right here. It all was kind of a fever dream yesterday. Shortly after that, Steve Wiltfong puts in his prediction that he believes Dylan Raiola ends up at Nebraska. And so I start texting some more people because Wiltfong's like the dude.
Well, he's not wrong often.
No, he's not.
He's actually right roughly 91% of the time.
Because he is super well sourced. He doesn't predict things prematurely. And that's, I think, what we saw yesterday was him getting really good information on this and basically switching his crystal ball. So as that's happening, I find out the stuff about Raiola being in contact with current Nebraska recruits. And then the Steve Wiltfong thing happened. So I started digging a little bit more. I was like, man, I don't know that Steve would do that unless this thing was basically a done deal.
If it had some legs.
Yeah, right. And so I'm like, hey, the way I would describe my conversation with the first person I talked to, this is my words, not theirs, is that it was near the finish line. Okay. And then this Wiltfong thing happens, and you're starting to hear all these crazy rumors. And so I started digging some more and heard from multiple other people that nearing the finish line may be selling it a little short, that this thing may be already done. That's where I believe we are this morning, is that Dylan Raiola, his visit to Nebraska is more of a move-in day than it is an official visit, because he's going to enroll early. He's going to, that's the plan, is he's supposed to enroll early. He was supposed to enroll.
It was always the plan.
Yeah, he was supposed to enroll early at Georgia. I would imagine, and this is, I mean, you're about that time of year. You don't have I believe they're already on break. Nebraska is, I think.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
I know Creighton,
it wouldn't shock me if a college is on break on December 12th.
I know Creighton is, because they were gone last week because they started doing this stuff with the student section of basketball games. I think Nebraska's gone already. So the visit doesn't make a ton of sense, especially considering he's been here like 100 times. So that's what I think is happening with that part of it. Now, again, a lot of that is rumors. The stuff that I know for sure, I told you I know for sure. But what's really interesting here is, I mean, let's not bury the lead. What's interesting here is that Nebraska might be landing a 5-star quarterback in this class, a guy that
they may be landing 2.
Right, yeah. I mean, a transfer in Kyle McCord, former 5-star, and Dylan Raiola, current 5-star, and at one point was the number 1 player in the class, depending on where you look and where the rankings are now. But so that's the lead here, is that Matt Rhule went out and got told no once with Ohio State, although I think that was maybe during Frostal. I don't remember. Got told no when he went to Georgia, even though there seemed to be a flirtation there with Nebraska at the time. Stuck with it, and third time's the charm, appears to be landing Dylan Raiola. That is an enormous, I mean, that in and of itself is an enormous story for Matt Rhule, for Nebraska. I mean, I'm pretty sure all Nebraska fans would trade Dylan Raiola for the bowl game that we missed out on. I know it's not like a 1-to-1 comparison here, but I'll certainly take that trade. It's hard to overstate how big of a deal this is if it actually comes to fruition, which I have every belief that it will.
Well, I said it last night. I made a video about all of the rumors swirling, and I'll say it again. Nebraska's about to go from one of the worst quarterback rooms in the country to one of the best if they can land Kyle McCord as well. Yes, I agree with everything Ravi just said. I don't need to do much repeating there because a lot of the stuff that he's heard, I've heard. And you can also kind of just use a little process of elimination to get to where you want to be with Dylan Raiola too. You look at Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, last night, and current players on the roster are tweeting out the side-eye emoji. And not just one player. It's not just Davon Hall, Malachi Coleman, Gibson Pyle. No, it's like 10 players that are tweeting out about this news.
And recruits as well,
And along the same lines, recruits. So you know it has weight when you see stuff like this. But then the other point that you were kind of alluding to with Coach Rhule, when Nebraska missed on DR more than once, is the fact that this is exactly why Coach Matt Rhule is the head coach at Nebraska. It's because of the relationships he's able to hold, even when you're not connected to the university. He held on to every relationship. He's holding on, I should say, to every relationship that he's had since he first stepped foot in Lincoln across the country. Whether a recruit said, no, I'm going to try my luck here, or whether he said, I'm still thinking about it, or whether he said, no, I'm going to come to Nebraska. He's holding on to every relationship. He is constantly checking in on people, and he's constantly keeping Nebraska in the ball game. And that is what was to be expected from him when he got here.
So I think,
because he preached that.
I think the relationship aspect here is really important, because one of the things we talked about when Matt Rhule got hired was that he doesn't build relationships transactionally. Like, he doesn't just build relationships with you when he thinks he can get something from you. And I think what we saw here with the Raiola situation was he built a relationship with the Raiola family when he first got here, trying to recruit Dylan, right? But
and by holding on to an offensive line coach.
That I think is a really important distinction here, because everybody, the next big question, right, is how did this all happen? And I have less concrete information on that, but I can pull some breadcrumbs together, right? I can put together a rational scenario that can kind of make sense on how this happens. And one breadcrumb for sure is not just that they retained Donnie back when they did, right? What I think actually made the biggest difference, because if they had retained Donnie at the time while Dylan was uncommitted, it could have looked very transactional in the sense of like, well, we'll keep your uncle, you come play for us, right? And I don't think, from what I understand, the Raiolas like to operate that way. What they wanted,
Coach Rhule doesn't like to operate
exactly right. Yeah, I know that about Coach Rhule. I believe that about the Raiolas as well. So what I think happened was we saw yesterday or a couple days ago, whenever the news actually came down, it's all kind of a blur now, that Donnie got not only an extension, but also a pretty significant raise to remain the offensive line coach.
$325 to $500.
That happened before any of this Raiola stuff happened with Dom and Dylan. I think they saw that and they go, oh, Coach Rhule's doing this because it's the right thing to do.
It's the betterment of the team. It's for the betterment of the team.
He appreciates what Donnie brings to the table. He's doing right by our family, even though we have nothing to offer him at this point. I think that meant a lot to the Raiola family. Again, that is me connecting dots. I don't have information on that. Second thing that I think is happening here behind the scenes is I think there is likely a quarterback coach who they know is coming, that they can tell recruits or transfers is coming, that has facilitated this interest by McCord and by Raiola and all of these guys, right? So if that's the case, you're like, okay, why don't you just announce it? Well, there is a season still going on for people that are either in the playoff or in the NFL. Okay? A guy that happens to still be in the NFL is a guy by the name of Glenn Thomas. Has worked for Rhule in the past, was his co-OC and quarterback coach in the past. Had that role at Temple, shared it with Satterfield at Temple, had that role at Baylor, shared it with Jeff Nixon at Baylor. This is, I think, as much about what Nebraska has done right as it is anything that Georgia has done wrong. Now, there are rumors out there that Georgia has screwed up an NIL deal or made some promises they couldn't keep. That's definitely in the picture as well, right? Like that's definitely on the table as something that happened. What I think actually may have facilitated that a little bit was there's some rumors out there that Georgia wants to go get a transfer that's like ready right away. And they'd rather spend the money on that guy than spend that on another freshman, because they already have a 4-star freshman in this class outside of Dylan Raiola. So maybe they say, hey, let's keep the cheaper freshman. Let's go get an instant impact transfer. That is a possible scenario on the Georgia side. But I really do believe it has more to do with what Nebraska's done right and what Nebraska has, like you said, those relationships that Coach Rhule builds. I think that Coach Rhule has been steady and genuine this entire time. I think the Raiolas have looked around the rest of college football, Georgia, Ohio State, wherever, and not felt that same way. Here's the other thing that I believe to be true. I don't know for sure, but I believe to be true, is that the Raiolas all along wanted to be in Lincoln. But they also had to make the smart move for what was best for their future, whether it's Dylan, Dom, whoever. I think by making these moves, by potentially hiring a quarterback coach that they felt a little more comfortable with, because the fact of the matter is, Satterfield hasn't coached quarterbacks as much as a guy like Glenn Thomas has or whoever, right? So I think they looked at it and say, okay, we've got a more proven quarterback coach, a guy that's coaching currently at NFL, theoretically, hypothetically, whichever. And we have this guy who has shown genuine respect and loyalty to our family at every turn, even when it didn't look like he was going to get anything in return, and he continued to do so. That I think is the recipe. And you have a family that already kind of wanted to be in Lincoln anyway, in terms of that's kind of where their heart was, but their head was pulling them a different direction. I think you pull those things together, you end up with what we had yesterday, which is it appears, for all intents and purposes, that Dylan Raiola is coming to Nebraska.
Well, and you also have to factor in this too, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, of where Nebraska as a program is headed, where they are today and where they are supposed to be in year 2 of Coach Rhule and year 3 of Coach Rhule. If you can speculate, maybe put a little expectation on this program. 5-7 this year is a good year. And even Coach Rhule said it. He's like, you know what? I'm cool with what we have, but we underperformed. And we know that next year we're going to take a step forward. Don't think that he's just the only one that thinks that.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiola family, too, sees the progress as well. And if Nebraska was in a position where it wasn't in this new and improved college football landscape with conference realignment and, maybe pushing more toward a Big 2 and NIL, I don't think you see Dylan Raiola come into Nebraska. I really don't, even with all the factors that you just mentioned. But it's because of the direction that the program is going that he can be a part of that and still be as big of a name as if he stayed at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge piece to this equation. Is if I'm looking to build my own brand, my own name, I have to do that at a place that allows for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Georgia gave that to him. Ohio State gave that to him the past 2 years. But then in a matter of a year, when you see all this conference realignment take place and you see USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington popping over and joining the Big Ten, well, now you know you're in this juggernaut of a conference. So there's piece number one.
Mm-hmm.
Piece number two is the direction of NIL and where that's going, and knowing what Nebraska can offer in the NIL department, which is probably just as much as Georgia could offer in their NIL department.
Yeah.
And so it's an easy swing. It's kind of like that kick in the rear of, well, I thought it had to be this place because for years, the 5 schools that always competed for national championships, I was a part of 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But now he knows that to build his own brand, he doesn't have to be a part of those 5 schools. He can do that at a school like Nebraska. He could do that at a school like Iowa if he really wanted to, or Michigan State, because of how the Big Ten is kind of moving. Now, Nebraska is the more supreme of those 3 that I just listed, and then you add in the connections with Dom and Donnie and the family, and so it kind of just is a nice, it marries itself together. But the whole point of this is Nebraska is not that much different from Georgia off the field.
No, they're not. No, I think they're actually really similar to Georgia off the field in terms of their commitment, both in resources, finances, facilities, like everything that this is why I've always said that not only is Nebraska a good job, but it's a job that you can win at. Is it hard? Is it harder to recruit here than it is in Texas? Sure. But if you're winning on a national scale, you're generally recruiting on a national scale anyway. I mean, it's not harder to recruit here than it is to like Notre Dame just because of academics, right? Like, I get that Notre Dame currently has a higher profile. It's always going to be harder to recruit to Notre Dame because you're just starting with a smaller pool of guys, right? You're going to be a nationally recruiting program, and that's okay. What I will say is I think there's something to the profile of the school, right? And Nebraska's profile obviously used to be as big as anyone's. It's still outsized compared to their success over the last 20 years. But I think you bring up a good point in you can be a star anywhere now, right? We used to see this with the NBA where it's like, oh, all the stars want to go to New York or LA or maybe Miami, whatever. Well, guess where the 2 biggest stars in the world play right now in the NBA? Milwaukee and Denver. Okay? Those are the 2 best players in the world right now, play in Denver and in Milwaukee.
Not LA.
And
even though LeBron's in LA.
And nobody talks about them moving to a bigger market. You know why? Because it doesn't matter anymore. College football is finally getting to that spot. And That's not to say that Nebraska is a small market team, but compared to where these other teams are, they're currently fighting for national titles. They're not currently on that tier. I also think, and this is a weird connection, and it maybe had nothing to do, at least consciously, with what the Raiola's kind of thought process was here. But look at the attention that Deion got at Colorado this year. Colorado wasn't good. They're 4-8. They're worse than Nebraska.
What do you mean they're not good? He was Sportsman of the Year, according to Sports Illustrated.
I totally forgot. Sports Person of the Year. They weren't very good. They were 4-8. They were subpar. They went 1-9 or 1-8 to finish their season after starting 3-0, right? Yet, look at the ratings for their games. I'm not a big TV ratings guy, but it was shocking how many of Colorado games were in the top like 10 or 15.
Now, granted, they got really good TV times.
They did.
And the amount of primetime action they got was a little insane.
But the point is, I think that TV networks, as much as anything, are looking for storylines with games even more so than they are looking for good matchups. Like Colorado State should not have did the number that it did. It was Colorado State. Who cares, right? Colorado, Nebraska sort of makes sense. But I think you can see, hey, this is the landscape of college football currently is, if there's a good story here, if Matt Rhule is bringing Nebraska back to glory, guess what's going to get good TV spots, right? Matt Rhule in Nebraska and Dylan Raiola and whoever else, right? I think they saw, hey, this doesn't have to be, you don't have to be at Bama or Georgia or Ohio State or Michigan. You can be anywhere if the story's good enough and you are good enough to lead that story. We will have plenty more on the Dylan Raiola situation as we continue on. We'll talk to Mike Schaefer later on in the show as well at 9 o'clock to get his thoughts. Coming up at 7:45, Allen Burrell, the new head football coach at Millard North. Speaking of Millard North, we'll talk to Eric Crouch, Heisman Trophy winner, about the Heisman ceremonies, and then 8:45 we'll get NFL with Vinnie Iyer. That's what's coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are getting you caught up on all things Nebraska quarterbacks. That primarily means Dylan Raiola, but there is another factor here as well, right? And that is, well, there's two other factors. Number one, Kyle McCord, who we were all very excited about this time yesterday. Still very excited about him, to be fair. I still believe McCord will also be coming to Nebraska. I think it'll be a one-year starter for McCord deal, and then Raiola takes over after. Either, I'm guessing as a redshirt, who they play in 4 games. That would be my guess on how that plays out, barring any sort of injury or anything like that. That is how I think this plays out. I think they want both of them. I would guess from what I've heard that both of them are okay coming in together. I don't know that for sure, but reading the tea leaves, I think that to be accurate. But there is another quarterback in the situation here that hasn't gotten talked about a ton. But he is one of the reasons that I started to believe this was actually happening. And it's because of a Pete Thamel tweet that came out yesterday saying, and I'll read it verbatim here. Sources: Nebraska coaches have communicated with in-state QB commitment Daniel Kalen that they are again in contention for a commitment from top 10 recruit Dylan Raiola, who is committed to UGA. Nebraska coaches have made clear that they still would honor Kalen's commitment. And the reason that sent off alarm bells in my head is because there is no way on God's green earth you have that conversation with your current quarterback commit unless this thing is done. There is just absolutely no way you risk losing your current quarterback commit for something that you think maybe might happen.
And there's no way Pete Thamel comes out and tweets something like that.
No.
If there's no way that he didn't get that from the horse's mouth.
From Nebraska. Like this is coming from Nebraska. Like I would guess, because of how tight-lipped this staff has been about things, I would guess this is coming from a very intentional leak of information from Nebraska's side. that they are going to keep their honor the commitment of Daniel Kalen, but I think this is sort of almost a bat signal to maybe some other recruits in the class that they might still be interested in, might still be in on, maybe some other transfer portal guys that, hey, like this thing is happening and we want you to know about it without spoiling this guy's ability to make a big commitment, I'm guessing, while he's here this weekend. Because let's not forget, one of the things we were so excited about with Dylan Raiola was all of the other potential talent he might be bringing with him. I don't know if that's the case or not still, but you have to remember back to a baseball game back in April, I think it was, when you've got
on campus with like 3 or 4 other 5-stars,
a bunch of high-level recruits doing Go Big Red chants at a Nebraska baseball game, and we saw a vision of a world in which Nebraska was landing these super highly touted recruits. So is there some possibility that might be in play once again? I don't know. Maybe. What I do think is in play is that certainly the transfer portal market, I think it's really interesting here. I think there's a shot at Trevor Etienne from Florida.
Top running back recruit.
Obviously, I think there's a shot with Princely coming here.
Top 3 in the transfer portal right now.
Yep, as a kind of an outside linebacker type, basically the same position as brother Prince Will plays. And I think you're going to have a shot not only at Fleming from Ohio State, but at multiple wide receivers to help provide some depth and experience to this group. I think this is as much as kind of a dog whistle. Be like, hey guys, we can't actually say anything yet because we have to let Dylan have his day, but like be ready because whether it's Friday the 15th, Saturday, whatever, like we're going to have some news for you and you're going to want to come here.
So the Kyle McCord stuff is interesting, and I'll start there. I don't think the commitment either phases whether he comes to Nebraska or not, or whether Raiola comes to Nebraska or not. You have to remember that McCord was at Ohio State when DR was committed to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to believe that they have some type of established relationship there.
You would think so.
And then on top of that, before DR decommitted, Kyle McCord was still expected to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So he was expected to join a room that Kyle McCord was already in and know that he would play some sort of understudy role to Kyle McCord. So that right there is why I think it's not impossible to get them both. More possible than impossible to get them both into the same room. The other point that you made there with the recruits, and don't think that Dylan can't send a text or two to some of his buddies that he's gone through camps with, that he's just met along the way, and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Think about if you guys came to what we could build at Nebraska. We could build something special. He's the ultimate recruiter at the end of the day. He's the one that can reach out to all of these guys and also keep those relationships that are so important for Coach Rhule to keep, even in his line of work. So that it's not a guarantee, but you can't expect Dylan Raiola to come to Nebraska and not also do his due diligence to get his buddies there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or not even just buddies, but like other studs there too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I mean, as we talked about, that's kind of one of the benefits of landing one of these types of quarterbacks is because of all the 7-on-7 events they go to, because of all the different networks and connections they make as they're going on visits and things like that, is they get to know a ton of these other high-level recruits.
Right, and I mean, just think about the Kyle McCord situation.
Yeah.
They're talking about bringing in Julian Fleming, too. So, it happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Where you get a top-name quarterback, and he's like, I'm going to bring my 5-star buddy with me.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this guy that I have a good relationship with. Like, we get along well, whatever. And if you've got quarterbacks and wide receivers that have good chemistry off the field, the chance of them having good chemistry on the field is even better. This is a this is an absolute coup for Nebraska. Like, there's no other way to put it. The positive vibes around the program are off the charts right now. This is I don't want to exaggerate here, but I'm probably going to. If this all plays out the way we think it will, let's just say it's Raiola, McCord, and Fleming. I'll leave ETN out of it. I'll leave Princely out of it.
I mean, I just got butterflies.
Right? Just saying that out loud. McCord, Raiola, and Fleming kind of gives you goosebumps a little bit, okay? If those three guys, I'm not even talking about ETN, I'm not talking about Princely, I'm just talking about those three guys. I'm not talking about anybody else for the recruiting class. That's it. Those three guys might mark the biggest Nebraska win of the 21st century. I don't think that's hyperbole.
And I don't think that's an understatement.
I really don't. I'm trying to think here and trying to, like, I know that the 2001 Huskers had a really good run, but then they lose to Colorado, they lose to Miami. Like, I was there, I was watching it. Like, I was very much in that situation. I don't know that anything else comes close. They haven't won a conference title this century. They haven't obviously won a national title. I don't know what second place would be. I really don't.
Do you look at this as, because remember I asked this to Steve yesterday, and he said, I don't think Nebraska will ever compete with like the top 10 recruiting classes.
And I disagreed with that.
And I don't know if I disagreed with it. I thought his answer was really good and well thought out.
I did too. So I guess where I push back is I don't know that they'll be in the top 5 range, right? I don't know that they're going to play in the Georgia-Alabama pool. I think that next range of, like, because right now they're pretty much playing in the 20 to 30 range. I think the 10 to 15 range is on the table.
And the reason I bring that point back up is because if you land exactly who you said they could land, if you add in ETN, if you add in Princely. Now, I know I'm factoring in transfer portal with recruiting.
But you have to now.
And those kind of go hand in hand now. You're looking at a top 10 recruiting class for next season.
Pretty close. Yeah, it depends on what some of the other guys do, but you're pretty close. Top 15, I think, at the worst.
It's just a matter if they factor in the transfers along with the guys actually branded to the 2024 mark.
Coming up next, we've got Allen Burrell, the new head coach at Millard North. We'll talk to him here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Want to remind you that when you're driving, hands on the wheel, eyes in focus, straight ahead. As the driver, you have one job to drive. This is a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. A man with one job now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Coach Allen Burrell. He is the new football coach at Millard North High School. Coach, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well this morning. How you gentlemen doing?
Good.
We're doing well also. First of all, congratulations on the job. I know this is a place that you had a ton of success as an assistant at back 08 to 15, where you were a part of 3 state titles. I guess what with your experience in that time made you want to return to Millard North?
Millard North always just felt like home. It was just the coaching staff, Coach Petito, Coach Mercedes, Tyler Cotton, Tim, Joe Petito. They always made me feel like I belonged there. And the success we had, the kids we coached, the community. So it was just always something that I always felt good about, being there, being around that culture that I always wanted to kind of return one day. So, and it's just always been a special place to me. So that's kind of what was the motivation behind it all.
Coach, what'd you learn in your 2 years as head coach at Mount Michael, and how do you think your time spent in that role has prepared you for this moment?
Oh man, I learned a ton. When you become a head coach, you know, not only you become a leader, you know, of men, but you have to work on all the intricacies of coaching football. You know, the X's and O's, kind of like how to run a business. Kind of putting yourself in that CEO mindset of just making sure everything is on a plane and everybody's on one accord. So it really prepared me just for being a leader more so, and just not only that, being a better coach, but being a better father, husband, as well as educator. So it gave me a lot of experience that I didn't really have that I needed to further my career.
We're talking with Allen Burrell, the new head football coach at Millard North High School. Coach, what are some of the things that you've thought about as you step into some fairly large shoes of the legend Fred Petito?
Man, you don't even know.
I'm a Millard North guy. I do know a little bit.
Yeah, you know, 41 years of success. You know, that's seriously. I can't duplicate what he's done. You know, he's one of a kind. He's a unicorn, and Fred is special. And a lot of people don't know that because they just see the product on the field, but you don't see what goes behind the scenes. One of the hardest workers I've ever been around. One of the best coaches I've ever been around. So, I'm never gonna be able to duplicate what he did, and I'm not gonna try. I gotta be me. I want that, you know. So I'm just looking forward to the challenge.
Coach, I like how you said that, because you know at some point it's important to be authentic, and as much as it's great to be a product of the Petito coaching tree, being 100% you and you alone is important too. What do you hope to bring to Millard North that is authentic to you?
Fast pace. Like I said, I have a track background, so I love speed. So fast pace. You know, the physicality is always there. That's one thing when you play Millard North. You know it's going to be a physical game. I love that part about it. So we're going to keep that into place. But a little bit, we're just going to do things a little different. You know, like I haven't been there in the last 9 years, so I couldn't per se how things have changed as of late. But I know we're going to be a little bit more open on the offensive side, as well as the defensive side. So I think we're going to bring some change of kind of how we train, how we go about doing things, how we prepare kids. Like I say, all in the way I see fit for our program and what serves us best with the guys we have. So those are some of the kind of the small things I would say. But like I said, I'm getting something with not only a foundation, but I'm getting a house. So I just got to make sure I, maybe change the paint on it a little bit, but everything's pretty much in place. I just got to go ahead and attack the process.
Coach, I'm sure the $1 million question for a lot of people that are familiar with Millard North football is, are you? I'll say you already know what I'm going to ask. I'm assuming you're going to change up the offense a little bit. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, like I said, I was at Creighton Prep. I got to be around some great minds at Creighton Prep. Andy Yost, Coach Young was a great influence on me. Like I said, their OC, Brett Newcomb, I'm going to be bringing along with me as my quarterback coach, TJ Fife. And I got to be around some different things, right? And I'm a product of NDSU, so I like some things that I went through in my past. But, yeah,
Coach, you mentioned Coach Petito's name a lot throughout this interview, but I'm sure you've had some other football influences along the way. Who are some of those role models in your life, in terms of like your football life, that have really helped bring you to where you are today?
I would say, reaching back to college, Coach Ball at NDSU, Coach Van Malone, Coach Reggie Moore that I got to play for in college. Then, like I said, Coach Young was a very influential piece to, my coaching career, I would say. Then there's another guy outside the football world that I really look up to that taught me a lot just about organization and being on point and trying to get guys on one plane. And that's a guy by the name of the head track coach at Creighton Prep, Dan Tejan. So I pulled a little bit of things from everywhere I've been. I pulled some things from, like I said, from being at Millard North a little bit, Creighton Prep, and as well as on the paint my own canvas at Mount Michael. So I would say those gentlemen right there have kind of inspired me to kind of pursue and do what I do.
Coach Allen Burrell, the new head football coach at Millard North High School. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the new job, and I look forward to seeing you next fall.
I appreciate you gentlemen for having me. Thank you.
Good luck, Coach.
Absolutely. That's Coach Allen Burrell, new head football coach at Millard North High School. Really glad we could get caught up with Coach Burrell this morning. Obviously, that's one of the bigger jobs that's opened up in the state in recent history here. So wanted to make sure we had a chat with him this morning. Did not know that we were going to be having all
swamped
these
with
other things
with a
going on,
the big recruiting rumor,
as everything going on as well. But really do appreciate Coach Burrell joining us. I do want to make sure I say in about 5-7 minutes, we will have Eric Crouch joining us. Another Millard North guy, former Millard North quarterback, former
I feel
Nebraska.
like this is a Millard North show.
Well, I mean, listen,
Shane, why did we let Ravi get away with that?
What's that?
He was
keep getting away with that.
He was very direct on his what he wanted yesterday.
No, we love talking to EC.
I said I wanted Dylan Raiola, and Ravi's like, no, we're talking to Eric Crouch. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Don't think Dylan's doing any interviews right now. No, we wanted to talk to EC because obviously just the Heisman just happened this weekend, and always good to talk to him. And you know, he may have some thoughts as a former highly touted quarterback recruit himself. Obviously, it's a different world now than when he was recruited out of Millard North to go play at Nebraska. But he was a parade All-American. He has at least more than we do, at least some idea of what it's like to be a highly touted quarterback prospect with the potential of coming to Nebraska. So I'm really excited to talk to EC here in a little bit. A reminder, we do have plenty more stuff on Dylan Raiola. We're going to talk to Mike J. Schaefer at 9. We've got him for that big segment at 9 a.m. So we will have for sure more stuff to ask Schaefer about the Dylan Raiola situation. I'm curious for him because I kind of went through my timeline of how things started unfolding for me. I'm curious for him when he started hearing whispers of there might be something in the air here a little bit. Because I'll be honest, before like 4 or 5 p.m. yesterday, this was not on my radar at all. I was looking Kyle McCord. I was looking who else they might bring in for transfers. I was like, is Princely going to schedule a visit? And then, as I mentioned, the texts start rolling in, the tweets start rolling in. I'm like, what in the hell is going on?
Matt Rhule shocking the world.
I thought somebody was trolling me at first. I really did. I was like, come on. Like, we're gonna fall for the
we're gonna do
Raiola
this
thing.
again.
It's like we're gonna Charlie Brown and Lucy the football thing again. Like we're doing, and then as I kept tugging at that string, I was like, oh, this is attached to something. This might be real.
There may be a fish on the hook.
I was gonna say we might have something on the line here, and what's on the line appears to be a 5-star quarterback, which maybe 2 5-star quarterbacks, which we will take.
Will we?
I think we might. Coming up, I don't know if he was a 5-star. We'll call him a 5-star.
With arms wide open, right, Shane?
With arms wide open. I don't know if he was a 5-star. We'll call him a 5-star. Former Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me.
What up?
We're live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities. And we're joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by former Nebraska quarterback, former Millard North quarterback, more importantly, and Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch. EC, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate your time for sure. It's a busy time of year for all of your former roles in life. I mean, Millard North just hired a new football coach. We just talked to Coach Burrell in the segment before. You just came back from the Heisman Trophy weekend, and there's some rumors about who might be playing quarterback in Nebraska next year. Like, things are going on in your life, EC.
Yeah, I better stay on top of these headlines.
I was gonna say you gotta
for sure.
Stay on the Twitter machine for sure. I want to start off with the Heisman weekend. I know you really enjoy going out there, and you always get that great picture with Johnny Rodgers and Mike Rozier.
Not Tim Tebow?
Well, no, it's just a Nebraska guy. It's just
Oh,
a Nebraska
I got
guy.
one with Tim this year.
Oh, did you get one with Timmy this year?
All right.
I need you, Eric. I need you to start wearing the hats like Mike is wearing. I mean,
know.
you got
I know. I'm thinking. I'm getting pushed a little bit. There might be a surprise coming. Let's
Hey,
say
be
that.
your own man, EC. Be your own man.
That's right.
No, but in all seriousness, I know that the Heisman weekend is always a kind of a special deal. What are some of your favorite things? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that goes on kind of behind the scenes that we don't see on the television broadcast and the presentation. But I guess what are just some of your favorite parts about that weekend and going back to New York for the Heisman presentation?
Well, I guess it's those intimate moments with the winners and their families and their wives where you're just sitting down and catching up and learning about them. I mean, obviously the show on Saturday is exciting. You're welcoming a new winner into the club. The Sunday night event that used to be on Monday is also a nice night where you get to recognize the winner, the 10-year, the 25, the 50. So those are also special moments. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are special about that weekend. But what sticks out to me the most is just those intimate times you're connecting with the former winners and their family members.
Eric, is there a kind of a random guy, like a non-Nebraska guy that you've just kind of like hit it off with and hang out with in New York every year?
I mean, there's several. I mean, we don't just spend the whole time and people are with their families, but I mean, I get to talk to Danny Werfel and his wife Jessica quite a bit. Usually we'll sit next to them at like a Broadway show, and they're fantastic people. Getting a chance to just connect and be around Tim Tebow and RG3, those guys are great. Steve Spurrier and Jerry Spurrier, they're great. We sat down and talked to them for a long time. They brought one of their grandson Parker. They bring a grandchild to the event each year, which is pretty cool for them. So just, I mean, besides getting the chance to see Mike and Johnny, I see those guys quite a bit throughout the year, but just other guys like even Troy Smith, him and I had a really great conversation. We were on the Nighthawks together, so we knew each other, from our football days. But, when I sat next to Ricky, he was celebrating his 25th, and we played in Toronto together, so we have a connection. So it's just, getting to catch up about family and what they're up to and, what's going on in their lives and, just to support them and get a chance to just build relationships. That's really what's special about this award.
Eric, speaking of the award winner this year, Jaden Daniels, you look at what he was able to do on the football field, and you can't help but think, wow, I mean, his numbers are fantastic. But there was some division on at least on social media and where I could find it about is the Heisman Trophy becoming too much of a statistical award? Because if you look at what Daniels was able to do at LSU this season when it came to ranked matchups, he was only 1-3, and he didn't really have a true Heisman moment, but he did have the numbers to go along with the Heisman Trophy. Do you find that the trophy is becoming too much of a statistical award?
I don't know. There's years over the past where guys have lost 3-4 games. I mean, that's out there. Even here in recent, I think, I don't know, the year Tebow won it, I mean, he may have lost 3 or 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and he had stats too. I mean, most winners have stats, or wins, or if they've done something special, and it's different every year. And to be honest, at the end of it, I'm in that group of where it was a close race. I mean, I've been there. When your name's called, the rest is history. You become the Heisman Trophy winner, and that changes your life.
We're talking with Eric Crouch, former Nebraska quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner. Eric, I was curious, I know the recruiting world has gotten way different from when you were being recruited out of Millard North, but you were a parade All-American. You were highly touted as well. I know it's the internet recruiting site age has made things really different, but as you look at a guy, let's just throw out an example like a Dylan Raiola, anybody that's a really highly recruited guy, what are some of the challenges that you think present being a highly touted quarterback as you come onto campus at a place like Nebraska?
Oh man, tough now. You'd be crazy not to think that money's one of the driving forces.
Mm-hmm.
With NIL now, it's changed how recruits. It's changed the portal. it's changed why players stay and go. It's actually kind of sad in a way, because I mean, I've always enjoyed the purity of the sport, but I understand there's a lot of money involved now, and it's just, that's where we're at with this sport. And I hope that it can, get fixed or not get worse somehow. But recruiting is different. And as you see, teams that are winning football games and championships are, they have a top level quarterback, and that's probably never going to go away.
Now, Eric, on the other end of this whole thing, in terms of the transfer portal, we know Coach Rhule preaches the importance of a tight-knit group, one where everybody's on the same page. But even still, it's hard to keep guys bought in when either A, the team isn't bowling, and B, playing time might not have been there. Even though the standard is set up for the guys to want to stay, has the lack of outgoing transfers surprised you at all?
Guys make decisions. I mean, it happens every year. There's a light on it now, a bright light. Whether guys are staying or going, or they just want to play, so they're not getting the opportunity. It's still a movement. I think it's more a movement because there's really no penalty. There used to be a year off. You'd have to really think about this. Am I going to go somewhere and have to sit out a year? It's all about what's best for me now. Which is unfortunate. I think that when a coach can create that chemistry with a program where it's not about anybody, it's about the team, I think that's when you really have greatness. And it's really tough to judge. It's really tough to find. It's hard to create. But as you see, when you're able to put everybody together on the same page and get it done, we'll watch that throughout the playoffs and see who comes out on top. Be interesting.
Eric, we'll get you out of here on this, as we've covered a bunch of different topics this morning. But I guess just how strange is it going to be, going to a Millard North football game next year and not seeing Fred Petito on the sideline? I mean, have you really thought about what that's going to feel like yet?
I embrace it. With Coach, he's been there a long time. He's done tremendous things. I mean, that program has been a program that had a lot of success, and not only the success, but the players supporting Coach Petito has been real high, and that's because people respect him. The players do. He lives and breathes football. I can't imagine that he'd be done the way this guy operates. But they got a good coach. I think Allen's going to do an amazing job at Millard North. He's been up there before. He's got history with the program, and I'm excited for the future as well.
That's Eric Crouch, former Husker quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner as well. Eric, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Hey, thanks for reaching out, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Eric.
That is Eric Crouch, former Husker, former Millard North quarterback, and Heisman Trophy winner.
You are right.
I just got to remind people, where people are coming from. He was joining us on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Warhorse Sportsbook is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can go to the casino in Lincoln or to Horseman's Park in Omaha. That's 6303 Q Street. You can place your bets on nearly every major sporting event. You've got straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets, all accepted. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for details and a full list of house rules.
I still have $50 left in my Follow the 100, Ravi.
Okay.
What team in the college football playoff is so who's winning it all, and where should the $50 go?
Are you you're just going on futures odds right here, or you want to go game by game?
I feel like we read something called No Bets, No Glory a lot.
Warhorse Sportsbook, No Bets, No Glory.
So if I don't make this big bet, I may not have big glory.
So, I mean, what you're going to get the best odds are if you pick a underdog.
Right. If I pick a Washington to win.
See, and I think Washington can win.
I think they can too.
I think they beat Texas because that's going to be a shootout. That's going to be kind of like an old school Big 12 shootout, I think. And I think Washington's better at that than Texas is.
And then you have Michigan, Bama, which is in my mind a toss-up.
Yeah, coin flip. I think they are pretty similar in terms of both physicality, how they play. I think that's a toss-up. And then we've already seen Washington beat an Oregon team that's as physical as those two other teams.
People looked at that Oregon team as the best team in college football when they were playing in the Pac-12 championship game.
I mean, they were double-digit favorites over this Washington team, which was bonkers, by the way.
Yeah, but remember, I said it feels like a trap.
Yes, and I was like, I'll take the trap. I want Washington. Give me the points. That we had that exact conversation. I was like, give me Washington. Washington's better. I don't care what they say. And so Washington has shown that they can not only put up a ton of points, but they can match physicality with these teams that are like the Michigans, are like the Alabamas of the world. So I think you get plus money on Washington at this point to win it all. That might be where that $50 needs to go.
Man, and I almost threw this money, and I'm happy I didn't, on Michael Penix to win the Heisman.
Yeah, I didn't think
the odds were so juicy.
And I didn't think he was going to.
But Daniel's odds were just such a heavy favorite that I couldn't get behind taking an underdog right before the ceremony. But in terms of, what we just spoke with Crouch about, it did surprise me that that Michael Penix didn't get more of a run because he had Heisman moments to his name that Daniels did not have.
That was the frustrating thing for me, is I thought it was pretty clear that Washington defined this football season more than LSU did. And that's what I talked about yesterday with what I wish the award would be about. And this isn't to take anything away from Jayden Daniels. He had an incredible year, right? But you're not going to go back and think of 2023 in college football and be like, oh, yeah, Jayden Daniels, right? No, you're going to think of one of a few things, right? Number one, if Texas pulls this off and wins a national championship, you're going to think Texas is back, right? You're going to the reemergence of Texas football. That'll be first and foremost. If Washington goes on to win, and maybe even if they don't, you're going to think of it as Washington, Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer, right? That's one of the very top storylines of the year.
If Michigan wins, you're going to think, the cheaters got it.
You're going to think it. You're not going to think of, J.J. McCarthy or Jim Harbaugh. You're going to think, Connor Stallions.
You remember that
cheaters.
Scandal?
You're going to think it's going to be, honestly, it's going to be the, what was it, Spygate, the Patriots deal. Representative of, hey, this is what defined the college football season. Eric Crouch is a good example of that. Other guys had better numbers than Eric Crouch. Eric Crouch had
like 10 interceptions to 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think it was 7. Yeah, it was a reverse ratio, but the rushing numbers were incredible.
Yeah, because he had like 18 tutties on 1,000 yards or whatever.
Yeah, and he had this incredible Heisman moment. The play that I believe was the play that Shane played, the Missouri play, where he goes like 98 yards to the house on this incredible run. He had this Heisman moment.
Is that a long way?
It's a pretty long way. It's almost as far as you can go. And he had these Heisman moments. He's leading this powerhouse Nebraska team that, people thought maybe was on the way, kind of dipping down after Osborne left. He was one of the people that defined that season. And if anybody from Miami had won it, that probably would have made sense too. But those were the two teams that defined the season. And the same thing, we mentioned Johnny Manziel yesterday. Johnny Manziel defined that college football season.
RG3
more
defined
so,
the college football season the year he won.
Yes. So when you've got multiple losses, like an RG3 did, like a Johnny Manziel did, like a Tim Tebow did, you have to be the thing that people remember from that college football season. And Jayden Daniels just isn't going to be that. like as much as I watch college football, I forgot about LSU half the time when they weren't playing somebody big because they weren't must-see TV. They weren't really in the title hunt. They were an afterthought for me. And I get that I don't live in the South. I don't live in SEC country. But if you're looking at college football from a national perspective, LSU wasn't important this year. They just weren't.
So what you're telling me is when the grass is greener on the other side, and when a guy by the name of Kyle McCord comes to Nebraska, you're slotting him down as the Heisman because he's going to define next year's college football season.
Let's pump the brakes here.
Oh, we can't get that far ahead?
I think in 2025, when Dylan Raiola takes over, he will win the Heisman.
Nice. All right.
Kyle McCord will probably just win like the Davey O'Brien or something minor like that. Not a big deal.
Kyle McCord will just win a national title, but Dylan Raiola is winning the Heisman.
He'll just win a natty and like a Davey O'Brien, maybe a Maxwell, nothing big. But
I believe Maxwell's a coffee.
Oh, I think it's also an award.
It's Maxwell House. Oh,
yeah, so close. Like Nestle Toll House.
Yep,
right in the neighborhood.
Just like Kyle McCord's going to take it to the house, right? Because he likes to use his legs a lot.
Wait a second.
Wait.
No, he's going to
Am
throw
I thinking
it
of the right guy?
to Julian Fleming, who's
Oh,
going to take it to the house.
Got it.
If you are just joining us, and Travis chimes in on as we wrap up the Heisman talk. Travis says, I didn't really think there was a bad choice among the finalists, but I had Daniels. I thought Daniels was the better one. He had probably the best. I mean, he had the best numbers, right?
Yep.
I just, like
It's
I
a
said,
stat stuffer.
as I think back about the season, LSU is not anywhere near the top of that list.
And to some degree, I wonder because yes, he was among the best group of the finalists. I wonder if Michael Penix, Marvin Harrison, and Bo Nix, because of what had kind of like transpired throughout the season, like Michael Penix was the obvious number 2 in that group, but is that group strong enough to overtake the numbers Daniels put up? That's what I had to rest with at the end of the day, because I don't know if that group showed enough to say that they had the better numbers to be considered the top overall player in college football.
Yeah, so I mean the Penix numbers are pretty ridiculous.
They're great.
They're up there.
They're really good.
He doesn't have the rushing that Daniels did. What I think was the bigger factor here was I do think there is in this, and I know some people overplay this, but we saw it with college football playoff. I think we saw it with the Heisman voting. There is a lean towards the SEC. In that situation where
there's a lean toward the SEC in every situation.
Right. Yeah. As well, college football, at least for sure. And probably college baseball too. But I think people looked at the numbers he put up in the SEC and thought, well, if he's able to do that in the SEC, whereas I could make an argument that the Pac-12 was just as good as the SEC this year, especially top to bottom. Maybe top end, you didn't have although how much different is Georgia and Alabama from Oregon and Washington this year? I think they're about the same.
They're pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the neighborhood, right? I mean, Georgia, Oregon, both right outside the top, the college football playoff. Alabama and Washington, obviously in the college football playoff. I think top to bottom, the Pac-12 was a better league this year. But unfortunately, with so many Heisman voters, this is kind of my one bugaboo about the way they vote for it. There are so many Heisman voters that not everybody's going to be as plugged in as you need them to be to get it right every year.
With all those Heisman voters, if they added more Heisman voters to the mix, would you want to be one of them? Absolutely, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. That's kind of what it's turned into is, let me have the pride of being a Heisman voter.
There's a ton of Heisman voters out there. And a lot of them, so here's the other problem with it is a lot of them cover college football regionally. They cover it for a specific team or a specific paper or a specific region. And so they may watch other things, but it doesn't necessarily benefit their day job, quote unquote, to watch Pac-12 football if they're an SEC writer, or to watch, Washington football if they're a Florida State writer or whatever, right? And so I think there is kind of an inherent skew in some of the Heisman voting because of the nature of who the voters are. And again, that's not anything wrong with any of those voters. If you see Jaden Daniels on a weekly basis, you're going to look at him and go, oh, wow, this guy's incredible. And he is. But you may not have the same motivation to go out and watch a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix or a Marvin Harrison or whoever on a week-to-week basis.
Is there a potential that we revisit this after the first of the year? And I know it's a regular season award, the Heisman is, but if Penix went out and just in 2 games just went out and just had stellar numbers, and you looked at it, and are we in January 10th going?
Yeah, it'll be talked about. Yeah. It'll be talked about for sure. And I don't think it's wrong to revisit it either, because you look at what happened last season, and some could make the argument that Duggan, what he was able to do at TCU, really defined the college football season, and his numbers were great. And because of what he did when he got to the college football playoff and upsetting Michigan, that he should have been more looked at as the Heisman Trophy winner that year. But you're right, Jane. It's a regular season thing, and it's not taking anything away of what Jaden Daniels has done.
No,
because he's done incredible things this year and he's put up incredible numbers. It's just more I can't rightfully say definitively that Jaden Daniels is the Heisman Trophy winner in my mind, because he didn't have a moment this year that elevated his football team outside of elevating himself.
Well, and here's the question I think you have to ask yourself about Jaden Daniels versus Michael Penix. Could you tell the story of this college football season without Jaden Daniels? Yes, I think you could. Could you tell it without Michael Penix? Absolutely not. That to me is that in a nutshell is what I want the Heisman to be. What player can you not tell the story of this college football season without? And to me, that was Michael Penix the whole year. Coming up next, we will reset the whole Dylan Raiola, Kyle McCord, Nebraska situation, and some other good news that came out of Nebraska football yesterday as well, here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are brought to you by our friends at Pratt Dental. Pratt Dental is located in North Platte, Nebraska, and they were the first dentist certified in the BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. The best part about the BioClear method is it's less time, it's less waiting, it's less invasive, and because you can do multiple restorations in the same day, it can be fewer appointments. To find out more about Pratt Dental and the BioClear method, go to prattdental.com/BioClear-dental-treatment. Or if you can't remember all that, go to prattdental.com. That's PRATT, and check under their services. Click on the BioClear treatment there. That's Pratt Dental. Wanted to jump back into Nebraska football here because it's been a busy day. Last 24 hours, honestly, last 18 hours specifically, where we've got all the quarterback news, but kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit was also some terrific news about guys returning to Nebraska next year. I mentioned one of these yesterday.
Sure did.
In Isaac Gifford that I believed was coming back, but he hadn't actually announced it yet. And then Bryce Benhart, who
we kind of knew about because he didn't do the senior day ceremony,
but hadn't officially said he was coming back either. Both of those guys, they put out a video last night on Twitter that they will be coming back. Bryce Benhart is kind of an incredible story in that a year ago, I think everyone would have been happier if fans at least would have been happier if he left the team, if he was gone. And he was maybe their most reliable lineman this year, and not just because he was clearing a low bar, but he was genuinely good this year. I think if he replicates what we saw from him this past year, he's going to get a shot in the NFL just because of his size and his experience. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not incredible at evaluating offensive linemen, except for when they're really bad mostly, but because that's easy to see, right? But I think Bryce Benhart might have had one of the biggest one-year turnarounds maybe that I've ever seen from being I mean, a punchline to
from somebody that on special teams wouldn't block.
Yeah, he was terrible. He was not good last year.
To old reliable.
He had not been good really at any point in his Nebraska career. And all of a sudden, maybe their best, certainly their most consistent lineman. It is mind-boggling. And again, credit to Dylan Raiola, a guy that, not Dylan Raiola, Donnie Raiola. Sorry, got Dylan Raiola on the brain. Credit to Donnie Raiola, the offensive line coach, for not just for being able to get the best out of Bryce Benhart, but just for continuing to believe in him at all, right? It would be really easy to kind of give up on a guy that had that long of a track record of not performing.
Well, that story right there is one of the key pieces to why he also got his extension, because that showcased how Donovan Raiola was able to develop this offensive line from bad to good. And now you can probably go from good to great. And you're going to see some key pieces start to come up now in the names of Sam Sledge and the names of Grant Bricks eventually. But Sam Sledge in particular, that recruiting class, right? Sam Sledge, Gunnar Gatula and company.
Brock Knutson and Mason Goldman. I think
that recruiting class right there is going to show exactly what you can expect from Donovan Raiola in terms of development. And once those guys start making their way onto the starting roster, then we'll really know if Donovan Raiola is as good as, the numbers say he is. But Bryce Benhart is a good teaser into that, seeing how he was able to bring a guy that, as you said, was as stagnant can be, and turn him in to one of the more productive offensive linemen this season. It's an incredible story. And it's also another credit to these guys, Bryce Benhart and Isaac Gifford, on wanting to come back, seeing the story that Nebraska is writing for themselves right now. Seen as, it's just like I talked about with Dylan Raiola and Kyle McCord in the opening segment. Don't think that these guys aren't coming back because they think, I just want to get one more year of football.
Yeah.
No, they're coming. They're either returning to Nebraska or coming to Nebraska because they see something special brewing. They see that, hey, a 5-7 season was underperforming for this team, was underachieving. And based on what they have in place today, this team could win 8-9 games next season. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of this really good turnaround for Nebraska football. And that's why you get guys like this returning. Yes, the culture is there. The brotherhood is there for guys that are already in the room, and the standard has been set by Coach Rhule and this staff. But for me, if a team isn't winning, I don't care how strong the brotherhood is. It makes it really difficult to say, hey, I'm going to put my body on the line every single day to win 4 games.
Not just your body, but your future, right? Like, it's not just about, because I think a lot of guys, if they really believe in what's happening, would sacrifice their body for that. But you also have to look at it from a, hey, this sets me up for my future. This sets me up for, if I were
guys that are going to go to the next level.
And even for guys that aren't, like with NIL, that can set you up pretty well for the future.
100%.
With even, and we know.
But is that enough if you're winning 3-4 games? I don't know.
Right. That's the problem,
is it
right?
Worth it? Is how I look at it. Is the NIL that you're receiving worth it for what you have to go through and what you have to put your body through for another season?
Well, and that's kind of what I mean is if you're not winning those games, then a lot of those other things in setting up for your future are less impressive. They're less helpful, because fact of the matter is, as much money as Nebraska has available to it right now in NIL dollars, can you imagine how much more money is going to be available when they start winning? Like, I don't know that people fully appreciate how rare it is for a team that has not made a bowl game since 2016 to have the NIL pulling power that Nebraska does. That is not normal. right? All these other teams that you're talking about that have all this NIL dollars, we talk about how Texas A&M is like, oh, they've got endless money and they can pay for whatever. It's like they've still
top
been
recruiting class.
They've still had winning seasons. They were, I think they were number 6 in the country in 2020. Now, granted, 2020 was a super weird year, right?
They may have been even higher than that.
They may have finished higher than that, but they were a top 10 team for sure in 2020, finishing the season. This is a team that has very recent success at a much higher level than Nebraska, and they're probably one of the worser programs that has this amount of money available for a team that isn't winning national titles. I don't know that people appreciate how much different things will be when Nebraska starts winning. We were kind of talking about this in the group chat last night with our other Hurrdat teammates, right? A lot of the people in the group are under the age of 30. Some are from out of state, whatever. They don't necessarily remember or weren't here when Nebraska was rolling. And I was trying to.
I wasn't even around when they were rolling in the Pelini era.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so that's the same with a lot of the other people that work at Hurrdat, because, they skew a little young. But I don't know that everyone, and it's been a long time, right? And I was just a kid. So I probably don't.
A kid and life is a nightmare.
Although
it wasn't a nightmare for you.
Not back then.
It was a nightmare for guys like me.
I would say if you were a Nebraska fan and a kid in the 2000s, like maybe it was a nightmare. But I was trying to find a way to describe like how great it is around here when Nebraska's rolling. And I don't
sweet it is
to see Nebraska. Oh no, sorry.
Okay.
That's
I actually like that more.
It's a totally different thing. Like
It's freaking great when they're rolling.
I don't know that people like that.
That's a different energy.
It's a whole different thing. I mean, think of like volleyball day in Nebraska. Every day. Like that's every day. When Nebraska football is rolling, that is every day. And it is a whole different beast. And that will also translate to NIL as well. That's the thing that I need.
Nebraska's close. They're close.
I think they got a hell of a lot closer yesterday. If we're being real here. Coming up next.
It's freaking great because that's what everybody's talking about. When Nebraska football's rolling, that's what everybody's talking about.
Even when they're not rolling, that's what everybody's talking about.
Fortunately.
It's more fun, though, when they are. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News for a little NFL here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi, Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And we are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News to talk a little NFL. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've been real college football heavy this morning, but we've got some interesting things developing in the NFL as well. Maybe the most interesting thing for me this week, at least, was the way that Cowboys and Eagles game went. Do you think the way the 49ers and then the Cowboys handled the Eagles, that there should be some legitimate concern in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not the same team as last year. And look, when you pay some people, then you get stuck in the salary cap a little bit. They had lost some depth, and that's what's gone right now. And they're a little bit long of the tooth corner, and that's hurt them all year with their pass defense. Their pass rush is not as deep as it was last year. So, yeah, they were going to take some step back defensively. But offensively, it's been a struggle, and I think part of it is that they're getting behind because of the defense, and they can't stick with the running game. Jalen Hurts is another factor as well because he doesn't seem to be fully healthy to just power run, right? They're still doing the short yardage pushes and all that, but in terms of designed runs and trying to get him there to kind of complement what they can do with DeAndre Swift, that's not happening as well. So they're not having the same running game, and when you don't have the running game and defense, you're going to be vulnerable against teams that have some offensive firepower. That's what we're seeing here in recent weeks. So Eagles, yeah, are going through a bit of a crisis right now. Can they rebound and get back on track? Absolutely. They went through just a brutal schedule. Now it gets a little bit easier. Seattle's not easy this week because it is also a hostile environment on Monday night. But they should finish strong. But the Giants, you never know. They have them twice. But Giants have suddenly won 3 in a row. So nothing is going to be easy in this league in the last 4 weeks, but it's just a lot more favorable than what Philadelphia went through here in recent weeks with the Dallas and Buffalo and Kansas City and Miami. It's been quite a stretch here, and they've survived pretty well, all things considered.
Vinny, as you watch that Bills-Chiefs game take place on Sunday and the way that things ended up, what'd you make of Patrick Mahomes' outburst after the loss? Like how bad of a look was it coming from one of the biggest faces in the league when he was obviously wrong?
Yeah, I think it was maybe misdirected, and I don't know how he could have handled that better because you can't throw Kadarius Toney under the bus, but he had to be frustrated. There were some things in that game where his receivers did the wrong thing on the back end of his throws, and it's been happening for multiple weeks, and I think it just came to a head here where you had many chances to win this game against the Bills at home. You didn't have to score a ton of points. You just needed a little bit more to win it. So I think it just kind of bubbled up to the surface here that, look, a realization maybe that, hey, we're maybe not right now in this current state capable of repeating and winning the Super Bowl. So maybe that came out to the surface. But in general, what I've known from Patrick Mahomes and had some interactions with him, that he is a pretty humble guy, and he's pretty good at giving the other team credit, right? I think there was just something with the way things ended in that game where I think he really wanted to maybe call out some of his players, but instead I think he kind of deflected things and said, okay, we're going to the officiating or whatnot. And I don't think the complaints by him and Andy Reid were warranted, really. I mean, people complain when officials get it right, and they can complain when they get it wrong. So I don't know, make up your mind here, but I think he could have handled the handshake a little bit better, but we're going to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt, right? If this continues and there's the change in him, and he's not used to adversity, right? I mean, 2-game losing streak is unheard of for Patrick Mahomes. So we'll have to just see how he handles that going forward. But I think he probably knows that more than anyone else, that he should have handled the end of that game a little bit better.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. He covers the NFL. Vinny, staying in the AFC here for a second, is there anybody you trust in the AFC? I mean, is there a team that you actually feel genuinely good about in their chances to win a Super Bowl against whoever the NFC puts in as their representative?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, San Francisco definitely looks like the favorite, and just waiting to see who's going to emerge from the AFC. But when you look at it, it's tough to figure out who's going to emerge from the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Chiefs. You can throw in the Jaguars. At this point, any of those 7 and 6 teams, I mean, right now, the way Jake Browning's playing, you can't rule out the Bengals, and the Bills are back in the mix at 7 and 6. And the Broncos, who know that they can make a run with the way their defense is playing at this rate. So I am just trying to figure out how it's going to end up in the AFC. But I think it's going to be a really compelling finish here, where I think any team that makes the AFC playoffs, I feel like would have a shot coming out. It would not surprise me if the 7 seed goes on a run and makes the Super Bowl. So that's how crazy it is, where it would be shocking to me if the NFC was represented in the Super Bowl by anyone else other than the 49ers or the NFC East champion.
Vinny, as you're eyeing up teams on the bubble in the NFL playoff picture, you have 4 7 and 6 teams in the AFC, and now 5 6 and 7 teams with the loss from the Packers yesterday. And the Packers, I still think, are that last spot in the playoff picture. So the 6 and 7, whatever team you want to slot in there, let's just say there's some teams knocking on the door. If you had to pick one in the AFC and one in the NFC that is currently outside of the playoff picture, who would be your pick to get hot down the stretch?
Well, I think the Rams might be an obvious answer in the NFC. I think that is a team definitely to watch. But I look at Seattle. I mean, this is an opportunity here this week. I know they haven't looked all that great, but they were a little bit more competitive than I thought with Drew Lock last week. They were definitely competitive against the Cowboys a couple of weeks. It all comes out of this game. Can they really win this game against the Eagles? If they can, and they have the potential to do that, definitely with their receivers, and attacking the Eagles' weakness, then they could go on a run for sure. I mean, Pete Carroll has had that history. It's a team that knows what they're doing in terms of getting the wild card. So a team that has that experience. So I'd say it's the Seahawks, but there's two things are going to have to happen. Pretty much they're going to have to win this week, and they're going to have to win that Rams rematch when they get that shot. And then in the AFC, look, right now, it's hard to say, but I feel really good about the Broncos. I just do. I mean, just the way they're playing. They have that key win against the Bills, and I think it's going to be tough this week. I don't like their chances in Detroit on a short week, but it's not an AFC game, so it doesn't affect tiebreakers and things that way. And these other teams also have some brutal things left, like the Bills playing the Cowboys and all that. So I still like that. I mean, the Seahawks, I think the pressure is in to win right now. And I think with the Broncos, look, even if they give up this game this week, they're not going to fall too far behind and still be in the mix here in the final 3 weeks back in conference play.
Vinny, is anybody going to win the NFC South, or should we just fire that division off into the sun?
Yeah, it's funny that we're coming full circle to the Buccaneers without Tom Brady, right? I mean, it's crazy. And look, the Buccaneers have proved to be, I think, the most overachieving team, where I would say New Orleans is highly underachieving. You look at the Falcons, they're up and down based on going home and away pretty much with the way their young team plays. But the Buccaneers have been pretty steady. Their schedule's been difficult. Now, all of a sudden, this toss-up game comes against Green Bay that you're not quite sure who wins this one based on the recent results here. But you look at Tampa, I still think they're well coached. They're winning despite a lot of defensive injuries here. And I never thought this was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a non-Derek Carr quarterback was going to prove to be the best quarterback division. I thought it might be Bryce Young to give the Panthers an edge. I was way wrong there, but I was kind of right in saying it's going to be a team that we don't expect getting better quarterback play. I think it's Baker Mayfield in the Bucs. I think that has been a legitimate find for them, and really credit to their coaching staff for getting Baker back in his comfort zone and as a potential division-winning quarterback again.
Vinny, we got about a minute and a half here. We'll let you go on this. Last night's loss for Miami was a bad one. I mean, Tennessee outscored them, 15-0 with under 3 minutes to go in that football game. And I say it's a bad one in terms of where they are in the playoff hunt, because you allow now the Bills to be a game closer to you and possibly taking home field advantage. But also now the Dolphins 9-4, they could have been making a push as the overall number 1 seed in the AFC if they could surpass the Ravens. How bad of a loss was that against Tennessee last night?
Well, it is concerning because two things are at play here. The Jets are next, and the Jets, I think, looked a lot better last week, and I think that could be a tough game in a short week here for the Dolphins. They're not going to roll them the way they did the first time, especially if Tyreek Hill is a little bit banged up. That's not going to happen. And then you look at the Dolphins, what do they get before facing the Bills again in Week 18? They get the Ravens and the Cowboys. And we know they have not fared well against really good teams in this league. So this is a game they absolutely needed last night because they were destroying bad teams. But you saw some cracks last time against the Raiders. They made that game closer than expected. So then all of a sudden they lose to Titans. So, yeah, all it takes now for the Bills to take back the division, the Bills just have to make up one game before Week 18 and just beat the Dolphins again, and they're in as AFC's champions. Quite crazy to think about.
Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News covering the NFL. Vinny, we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Vinny.
That's Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News covering the NFL. Coming up next, we've got Mike J. Schaefer covering Nebraska football and a little bit of recruiting. Wonder if we'll have anything to talk to him about here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Not much there.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. Shane Schillerberg producing. We're efforting.
He'll be here in 2 minutes.
Okay, we are efforting Mike Schaefer. He will apparently be here in 2 minutes. And we will.
Is he busy or something?
Yeah, I think he might have a lot going on this particular.
What do you mean?
He might have a lot going on this particular.
He's too busy for us? Come on.
Not too busy for us. Just going to be a couple minutes late. It's all right. We got plenty to talk about.
Better be fashionably late.
We got plenty to talk about.
I need to see a nice hat on him.
if you're going to be fashionable with your car, you got to take it over to Dingman's. You need some work done.
You get a little detail done.
Yeah, make sure your car looks fashionable again after maybe you've been in a little accident.
Oh, are you saying something that's true?
Yeah, I'm just talking very specifically about your situation.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Thanks for reminding me.
You can go to Dingman's. They've got 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been family owned and operated in Omaha for over 25 years, and they've been voted first place best of Omaha for 18 years running. They work on all makes and models from Fords to Teslas, and they've got the latest technology to stay up to date with the ever evolving industry. And my favorite part about Dingman's is they give back to the community. For every car repaired, they give back. Go check out dingmans.com for more information. As we wait on our guy, Mike Schaefer here, want to kind of reset where we're at with the whole Dylan Raiola, Kyle McCord, everything that we've learned since yesterday evening.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
I don't think there is any bacon involved, Shane.
I'm hungry. Thanks.
About this time yesterday, we were talking about, okay, we think Kyle McCord, we like our chances there. We think he could commit kind of any day now. He's on a visit. That's all still true as far as we know. Then we had the bombshell dropped yesterday of the Dylan Raiola situation rapidly changing. And one of the things that I want to talk to Schaefer about, because my understanding of the situation is this was a very late movement thing on Raiola's part. This does not appear to be something that's been in the works for days, even certainly not weeks or longer. This seems to have been a pretty last minute change from what we were expecting. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Raiola, I think, was supposed to move into Georgia within the next week or so. Like, this was not this was a fairly abrupt thing. And I don't know that a lot of people were aware of what was happening before that. So I know there's some people that kind of are, conspiracy theorying it up and be like, oh, did they know this whole time and whatever? To my knowledge, that is not the case. Mark, I don't know who Mark is on the stream, but he says they're both supposed to commit on Sunday. Mark, if that's right, that'd be terrific.
Yeah, he said earlier on in the show that 24/7 Sports, which we can ask Schaefer about because that's who Schaefer writes for, put out a
wasn't us.
Some sort of
fake account.
Okay, there it is. So now,
let me give me a minute on this.
Go ahead, take it.
If you are the type of person that pretends to be another individual on Twitter, pretends to be a news entity for your own entertainment, congratulations with your 24/7 Husker account using our masthead, pretending to have breaking news. And if people just went back through, had all of like 2 tweets in the last year. So obviously our account would have more than 2 tweets, as Nebraska had more than 2 fumbles inside their own 20-yard line. So that would have prompted tweets alone. But yeah, just a great message for people to, really think about the account that you are retweeting and believing, because most of these accounts know nothing. They steal information. They publish information that's not theirs, and they do it for Twitter engagements for Elon Musk and his beautiful town square. So, just keep that in mind. But I think we have a few things to talk about that aren't just me complaining about.
Hey, good morning, Schaefer.
Hey, Schaefer.
Yeah. It's been a day. It has been a day.
Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7 joining us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Schaefer, so let's start with, when did you first become aware of this Dylan Raiola thing, that there might be actually something here?
I think slightly after the rest of America did, as I was taking a shower at like 5 p.m. because I had to go run an errand. I hadn't left the house that day yet, which, if you really want to know how the sausage is made, when you work from home 90% of the time, you don't always feel compelled to wake up and take that shower immediately. So, but I was leaving the house. I needed to be a presentable human. And I get out of the shower and my phone is just melting. Like, it is just melting. And I open it up and there's like I don't know if this has happened for you guys where you're in a few group texts or you're in first text you see out of like 60 is just somebody WTF. And so you don't even know what they're responding to because you just are opening your phone and then you're looking through it and it's, there's like a Raiola exclamation point, a Raiola question mark. What the hell is going on from Brunts? Like there's all sorts of stuff like that. And so for me, I was probably about 15 minutes behind everyone else and very confused, but also very clean from a hygienic standpoint. So, that's what matters here. When I found out that news, I was as clean as I could possibly be.
So, as you find out this news, what is your process? I'm sure you started digging into this to find out, like, okay, how much validity is there to this? Obviously, Steve Wiltfong, who we talked to yesterday, changed his crystal ball, which as part of your organization, I'm sure that carries a ton of weight as well. That dude gets a lot right in terms of those predictions. So what was your process as far as like digging into how true this is or isn't? And what did you find out by the time we got to last night or this morning?
Well, you just immediately get on the phone and just start making phone calls. So I talked to Steve for a little bit and, had a general idea of where his information came from and why he thinks what he thinks. And then, went to our Georgia message board and looked at what they were saying and what they were writing. And the large conclusion here is the Raiola family is just unhappy with Georgia. There's, a lot of, at this point, reasons as to why. And only ultimately Dominic and Dylan and the close family probably know what exactly it is. And I think the Georgia coaches, which is, I think, where the information kind of started that, hey, this is getting, we're going to lose this kid. So I am under the belief that the Raiola family is not happy with how things have played out at Georgia. And they're big on promises. Ohio State broke promises for them and they immediately decommitted from Ohio State. I think Georgia has broken several. And I think the decommitment is imminent. And I think Nebraska is the location where this is, they're going to be the big beneficiary here. And the fascinating thing to me is if you go back to October 21st, Nebraska plays Northwestern, and Dylan Raiola is in town because Dayton and Raiola is a recruitable athlete that Nebraska has. And Nebraska is not treating Dylan like a recruitable athlete. He's wearing a different placard, the kind of thing that you do if you're a hanger-on family member, if you're not a recruit. He told people in a Georgia group text of commits, hey, I'm just going to this game because Nebraska is recruiting my brother. It's a family trip. So this wasn't like I think Nebraska has always been very cordial, and I think they always will be because, again, his dad's name is on the wall of the stadium. Like he is always going to be linked to being Nebraska, whether he ended up here or not. And that was always the thing. And I think they always wanted to leave it that way because of the way the transfer portal works anyways. I think they always felt like there was going to be a second opportunity and really, honestly, a third, but a second for this staff. And here it is in December, nearly a year to the date of which I think they went down and first met with Dylan Raiola after he decommitted from Ohio State. So it's, it's funny how these things kind of work. I'm reminded by the fact I put in a crystal ball for him in February based on everything I was hearing at that time. And I felt good about that crystal ball at that time. And then obviously things happen and Georgia being Georgia is really tough to overcome. But I think Nebraska's situation is pretty inviting to the Raiolas just because Nebraska clearly needs a quarterback. And I think right now, after all of the talk, all of the season of what is 1890 and what has the collectives done, I think Nebraska is going to throw that cash this offseason. We'll put it that way. They are not going to be left, just wondering where do they invest their money at this point. I think they've targeted several investments, and we will see if that pays off for them.
Well, Schaefer, a couple things that you said there. The first one that I want to hit on is that you said broken promises, kind of hit deep for the Raiola family, but that also goes to show how strong of a relationship that Nebraska still held with Dylan Raiola, and that's credit to Coach Rhule. I mean, that's what he's been preaching from the very beginning. How important is that that relationship message, maybe not even just to Nebraska, but to the rest of the college football world that, hey, you hold relationships with guys, anything can happen.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I don't want don't want to say too much because things always have a way of changing, but I think you can sort of see how players revere their first year with Matt Rhule based on how few guys have gone into the portal. I think guys want to be a part of this program. I think inside the walls over there, they feel like they massively underachieved to what they could have been this year. And I think there's a lot of belief that there could be a pretty good team next year. And so because of that, guys have bought in. And I think if you can make that visible, I think if you're Nebraska and you're bringing Kyle McCord through yesterday before the Raiola news even happens, I think you can show guys that are coming here for the sole purpose of 1 year and to win games that this is a place that is good from a cultural standpoint, is pulling all in the same direction. And all of that to say, it's not like this happened overnight. I mean, Matt Rhule had to earn the trust of his players. He had to earn the trust of recruits. He needed to then be able to show recruits that revisiting what the culture looks like. And then more than that, those recruits need to be able to have conversations with players without the coaches around, without anybody else around, where they get the honest assessment of what Nebraska looks like. And the honest assessment, as far as I know, from talking to players that I have, is they're very happy with how things had transpired, at least off the field, where Matt Rhule has taken them, the trust that they have with their coaches. And if you're looking for a place to play, and if you're essentially a mercenary, I mean, there's a lot that's inviting about it. And so I think relationships are a big thing. I mean, like, let's take a look at these other recruits Nebraska has already won out for. They got Grant Bricks because of relationships that Grant Bricks had with Nebraska's staff, where he felt very strongly that Matt Rhule was going to put this thing in the right direction. And even though Nebraska went 5-7, he still wanted to be a part of where this is going to go. Carter Nelson, that relationship couldn't have been more solid, that Nebraska felt so comfortable with Carter Nelson. They didn't panic at all when Notre Dame shows up in Elgin, Nebraska, and then gets him to show up to the, the USC game that he went to in October. Never wavered, no concern. Ja'Cory Barney commits to Garrett McGuire and Matt Rhule because that's where his mom thinks that he can grow up and become the best player that he can be. Meanwhile, Miami wants him, Arizona wants him. All of these teams are interested throughout. Ja'Cory Barney Brian Christopherson had a great story on Ja'Cory Barney that people can find on Husker 24/7. Like, relationships matter. I think that's why they're getting a fair amount of these commitments. And I think it's why they have largely stuck. And the ones that haven't have been kind of Nebraska's call. Like, it hasn't been, Kawan Lacey is the exception here. But for the most part, it's largely been Nebraska like, hey, look, you're going to look around. We don't have a spot for you. Or, sorry, we thought that something was here, but right now we're against our numbers. So I think that relationships really matter to them. And I think that's visible when you're over there visiting and sort of being immersed in what's happening in Nebraska.
The follow-up that I wanted to get to, Schaefer, was when you brought up Kyle McCord's name and the connection with Dylan Raiola wanting to come to Nebraska because there's room. There's a spot for him to be successful, probably sooner rather than later. And I've been reading a lot that even though all of this is kind of stirring up in the Dylan Raiola camp, that it won't affect Kyle McCord and his vision of Nebraska or potentially his commitment to Nebraska. Are you seeing or reading into the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that exactly plays out. I think, from a logical standpoint, it's very easy for me to sit here and be like, okay, well, if you get Kyle McCord, he can start for 2024. If you get Dylan Raiola and Daniel Kalen, they can both redshirt and prepare themselves for ultimately what is going to be the spring battle of 2025. And you've got yourself your future and you've got your present. Like, talk about a great offseason. And yet I just don't know how that works optically, because I think Dylan Raiola wanted the opportunity to compete in the spring of 2024. And I think Carson Beck returning at Georgia has part of where the Raiolas might be unhappy is that. Now, do they view the McCord situation as different because Nebraska never told them that there wouldn't be a returning incumbent starting quarterback? Maybe. But I also wonder if it's kind of a, hey, we know you need a quarterback. Like, we're going to put ourselves into this and kind of muck everything up. And so I don't know. I don't know if that was the intention of the Raiolas. I don't know if it was the intention for the news to come out the way that it did. It seems like Nebraska very much is trying to do damage control. If you saw the Pete Thamel tweet about letting Daniel Kalen know that he still has an offer and is still, welcome to commit. But that's awkward too. I mean, I feel terrible for Daniel Kalen today. I mean, basically every step of the way, he's always had Dylan Raiola over his shoulder. I mean, all the way back to when he gets his offer in May, and then he's at Friday Night Lights enjoying it as an offered kid, and Dylan Raiola is out there just, throwing touchdowns and getting everyone fired up. And then Dylan Raiola commits to Ohio State, and it looks like Daniel Kalen's the new guy for the new staff last December, and then he decommits from Ohio State, and they have to redo everything with Kalen in May. So I don't know how that's going to play out either, but I think they have to massage some egos, and they have to really kind of play on different timelines here to get everybody working in the same direction. Because if Nebraska leaves this offseason with Kyle McCord for 2024 and Danny Kalen and Dylan Raiola for the future, I don't know that there is enough pluses on the planet to describe how they have attacked their quarterback room. Because where I was on the phone before I came onto this show talking to a guy that works for us who's going on CBS, trying to be like, okay, so Jeff Sims played till the fourth quarter against Colorado, and then you had Heinrich Harburg until the first quarter against Maryland, and then you had Jeff Sims again, but then you finished with Chubba Purdy, and I could see the gears working in his brain as he was trying to figure out how Nebraska's quarterback situation played out in the fall. So for them to walk out of the offseason with these guys, it would be tremendous.
Schaefer, I said this earlier, and I want you to tell me if I'm being crazy or if this is accurate, okay? I said that if Nebraska landed McCord, Raiola, and I threw Fleming in there just for kicks and giggles, right? If Nebraska landed those three guys, would that represent Nebraska's biggest win of the 21st century?
Yeah, I mean, Raiola himself is the single biggest recruiting win in decades.
Certainly the internet recruiting era. It's the
right.
Yeah.
So then there's that. So that alone. But then to me, like McCord and Fleming are so critical to what I think Nebraska could be for 2024 that it just expands it. Yeah, I mean, if they have a day where it's just like, and then you can even throw in Prince Will's brother if you really want to. I mean, there is a way that Nebraska just totally goes from team that could be interesting in 2024 but hasn't proven anything to, it's not even a joke anymore, legitimately being handed a title belt that says off-season champions. Like that's how good it could go for them this week if some things play out how they could. Now, being a citizen of Nebraska most of my entire life and someone who has covered this team since 2009 and followed this team since 1993, generally when it looks too good for Nebraska, there's something that goes against it. But if they were to walk out of there with that kind of haul, that just would reinvigorate the idea. I mean, they got huge news. Yes, like the Raiola thing overshadows that they have Kyle McCord on campus. Bryce Benhart says that he's coming back. And I know that there's people that have feelings about Bryce Benhart, but I thought he was their best offensive lineman at times in 2023. And you're getting him for another year, and he's just going to be a steady veteran. Yeah, and so I'd be excited about that. And then Isaac Gifford was kind of your it guy on defense. He sort of embodied the Tony White defense to me in a lot of ways. And so to get both of those guys back, and it feels like it's the third most important thing that came out of yesterday because of the two quarterbacks. Like, that's remarkable.
Schaefer, yeah, you're right. There was a lot happening yesterday, right?
Yesterday was a news heavy day.
A news heavy night
until 5 o'clock.
Right.
And then everything happened from 5 until roughly 10 p.m.
Do we want to toss in, since we're dreaming about potential offseason championships, do we want to toss in Trevor Etienne from Florida as well, just for fun?
Do we know where that actually is coming from?
I have no idea.
Nope. It's just kind of it's just a rumor circling right now.
I have no idea. That's kind of why I was asking, because I was like, I don't know, man.
It appeared on our message board, and I was like, where is there? So, like, my job generally, whenever I see any rumor, is to go look for the direct source of where the rumor could come from, or figure out why there is smoke, what the fire is to the smoke that is fanned out to rumor land. And the Trevor Etienne thing, I mean, at one point, nobody from Nebraska's staff after this rumor had come out was even following him on Twitter. So it didn't feel like he was a target at that point. Now, multiple members of the staff are, and maybe things have changed that directly. I mean, he was at Florida, right? So, I mean, if maybe Princely has talked to him, I have no idea. Chief Borders, obviously, and Corey Collier were at Florida last year. So maybe they have some kind of pull there. Maybe it's just like the Raiola, McCord, Fleming. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
but
the
that
rumor I
one,
saw.
it just caught me by surprise completely when I read that. And then I couldn't find anything to corroborate it. I don't have any information within 24/7 Sports right now that corroborates it. So I can't speak on it. But yeah, they need a running back. They really, really need a running back, in my opinion.
And I think it's a combination of that, Schaefer. And so the thing was, Trevor Etienne shared a post on his Instagram page of Chief Borders. And so that's where I think the stretch kind of came in. Like,
working a little bit on that one.
Right. Well, and it's the season of wishing, right?
And
when you see
tea leaves out
right,
here,
when you see what happened last night, and people see then connection to the top running back in the portal, and then you also have the brother of Prince Will from that university, maybe also having some sort of tie-in. It just seems like everybody's trying to stretch the silly putty as far as it can go before it just strings off.
You now have me wanting to create like this thing where I have like a Stretch Armstrong stretched out completely, and then you dub over a screenshot of like a message board post and you put it on the Stretch Armstrong, and it's your stretch of the day featuring Stretch Armstrong, and it's the most absurd thing that you find on a message board. I feel like people would really like that. I'm going to pass that idea to the message board geniuses.
Yeah, and you know what? Just use the 24/7 Sports logo, make 2 posts, like it'll be fine.
You borrow anything from our website that you want. You need photos? Take them. You want our inside information? Have it. You want access to the database? Here's the key.
I was I just had a vision of our sales team reaching out to a yoga studio for our Hurrdat Sports Radio recruiting stretch of the day.
I like it. Look at that. I like that a lot. That's
and Mike Schaefer gets 2% royalty on every deal.
I don't need any royalty, but I just want to be asked never to try to perform the stretch so I don't throw my entire body out of whack.
We will not be asking any warrior poses out of our guy, Mike J. Schaefer. Schaefer, anything we missed? You got like 30 seconds. Anything we missed?
I would keep an eye on 2 people here. We'll talk next Tuesday before signing day, but 2 other names to keep an eye on. Xander Ruggiaroli, offensive lineman from Bishop Gorman. It looked like Nebraska was going to be out of room, but I talked with him last night. I think things look good for Nebraska there, so keep an eye on him. He would be a left tackle of the future to slot in behind Gatula and Prohaska. And then Amari Sanders is another name to keep an eye on. He dropped the top 5 at the beginning of December. I think it's Nebraska, Virginia, and I like where Nebraska sits. That's a signing day decision. So I can talk more on those guys next week. But I think a couple more names to know.
Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7. Great stuff as always Schaefer. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See you, man.
Coming up next, we've got Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, in KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
I'm right here.
We have been talking a ton of Nebraska recruiting, Kyle McCord, Dylan Raiola, tons of stuff this morning. If you need to catch up on that on YouTube, on Twitter, or on the podcast. But right now, we're going to get into a little Hurrdat Hot Seat. Got tons of questions, sports, non-sports related, that are burning a hole in our pocket. Andrew, I'll let you start.
I'm going to kick this thing off with what's happening this weekend.
Okay.
It is bowl season.
Okay.
As much as we would rather be talking about bowl season with Nebraska's name tied to it, today has been a fun day, and we can still talk about bowl season.
Absolutely.
And so my question to you is this. If one bowl game sponsor went fist to fist with another bowl game sponsor,
ooh, okay,
what matchup would you most like to see, and who would win?
Okay, this is an interesting question here. You told me to bring up the bowl matchups. I have not gotten to prepare for this question, so we're gonna go through this live.
So I'll tell you the top 4 in my opinion.
Okay,
you don't have to go with it, but I think you would probably fall on the same wavelength as me.
Okay,
you have Tony the Tiger, that is a bowl game. You have the Pop-Tart Bowl, the Cheez-It Bowl, and Duke's Mayo Bowl.
So you're going food.
So like those foods right there, I think would be fun to go like, hey, who would win in a fist fight? The Pop-Tart Bowl or the Cheez-It Bowl?
Okay. You're leaving out the famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
You know what I am in this case? You can add them in if you would like.
I think the potatoes beat the mayo. I'm not going to lie to you. The mayo, I think, just kind of sits
Is that what
there.
you're going for? Like in the ring, you're going potatoes against mayo?
If we're going to be in a fight here, I think Lockheed Martin probably wins the Armed Forces Bowl. I think they probably win fights against everybody else.
But I'm not going with who's going to win. I said, who would you want to see, and then who would win that fight?
Okay.
Like DirecTV against what?
DirecTV against TaxAct. Okay, so I think this might be interesting. These are, I think, polar opposites.
Okay.
We've got the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Against the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
All right.
Very
I'm
spicy
a big fan.
Against super bland. I feel like we might have a clash of the polar opposite styles of play there, that we might have a clash. We'll see what happens.
I think the avocados from Mexico against the famous Idaho potato would be fun to watch.
Well, they would look very similar. Might be a little confusing on which one's which. Kind of got the brown exterior and similar shape. You might have that would be a uniform code violation, I think, if they were playing in a game.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what pair of shorts they're wearing. Are they red? Are they black? Are they white?
You cut them open, you can see which one's which. One's green, one's white.
Think about it, like Bad Boy Mowers.
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's a great bowl game out there against
What about Chick-fil-A? Like, what about Barstool? The Barstool.
I know. I'm looking at it. I'm looking like Bad Boy. Who would be good against Bad Boy Mowers?
I don't know. That one's tough. There.
Like Surf Pro?
Surf, maybe.
Surf Pro?
I kind of want to lean Tax Slayer, but that's just because the word Slayer's in the name. Yeah, I think
you have Scooter's Coffee too. Don't forget about Scooter's Coffee in this mix.
I'm gonna stick with the Wasabi versus the Mayo. That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, for me, I have to throw Pop-Tarts in there because
Love
it's the new bowl.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw the Pop-Tart bowl in there. And if I had to put Pop-Tarts up against anything, Pop-Tarts against Duke's Mayo, maybe?
Thomas says, bro, the Holiday Bowl humpback whale wins every time besides the literal U.S. military.
That's a good one. I'm not asking, though, like which bowl like is superior to all other bowls in terms of who would win in a fight. I'm asking who would you want to see
Lockheed Martin against the humpback whales. Let's go.
It is a good thought, though. It is a very good thought. I like where his head's at.
That's funny.
But yeah, all of these bowl games are just kind of funny to me. Just the names are kind of getting crazier and crazier as the years go on, and there's a new bowl every 5 minutes. The only one that I really think that I need in my fight is the Pop-Tart Bowl, but I'm just struggling to figure out who to match them up. Because like Tony the Tiger would be fun to watch. A little fisticuffs.
I don't know what kind of a fighter he is, but he's certainly got the build for it.
Yeah, you give him like put him up. Put him up. I feel like that's a Wizard of
Tigger.
Oz thing.
I think that's it might be.
It is Tigger.
I think that's Tigger.
Hey, you're right.
I don't know. His paws seem a little soft.
I mean, what you think he's declawed? You think they declawed
so.
Tony the Tiger?
I think so.
Maybe he's around children.
That's inhumane. You got to be careful there. You don't want to declaw the tiger. All right. So did you pick one? Or are you going Pop-Tart and I think Cheez-It and Pop-Tart makes sense.
Do you think that makes more sense than Duke's Mayo?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
In a one-on-one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
They're both.
Like I said, I had that down to like a top 4. I really liked the Tony the Tiger. I just didn't know who to match Tony the Tiger up.
They're both rectangular shaped sort of snacks there. So, yeah, I think
there's no other animal on this list.
No, there's really
other
not.
than the holiday humpback.
I was maybe the humpback way.
But I know Tony the Tiger isn't getting near water.
No, yeah.
And I know the humpback's not getting near land.
Well, I mean, they are mammals. Maybe they find their way on. All right. So my question, we're gonna go. I was kind of thinking about this with Vinnie Iyer, and we didn't really get to it. But is there any team in the AFC that you would take over any of the top 3 NFC teams in the Super Bowl?
Ooh.
So we're talking
yep.
Dallas, Philly, San Francisco against any team in the AFC.
I think the Ravens could give a team in the NFC a run for their money. That's the only team that I feel comfortable about right now, because the Chiefs haven't given me much to.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs are in that
they haven't
neighborhood.
given me the so-called. How do I want to say it? They haven't been the monster that they have been in the past.
No, they've been disappointing.
So the Ravens, though, are interesting because on offense, they look really good, really solid, even with a juggling act in the running back room. But like OBJ has looked like he's reemerged. Zay Flowers is becoming maybe the top wide receiver out of that class, the most recent NFL draft class with that team, at least the most productive. Mark Andrews is still one of the best tight ends in football, and Lamar Jackson has looked like an MVP candidate. Offensively, they look really good. And also on defense, I mean, the Ravens are always solid on defense. Always, but they did a great job of adding some top names like Roquan Smith to that room last year and plenty others. The Ravens are the only team to me, and I know it's kind of the cop-out answer because they're the top team in the AFC, but they're the only team that can really take down the 49ers on a certain night, the Cowboys on a certain night, and the Eagles. Are you factoring in the Eagles into that
those
mix
are the
too?
top three.
And the Eagles.
I think the Ravens are fraudulent. I don't know. Having watched them enough this year, I don't.
You can convince me on the Dolphins.
I'm not.
You can convince me on the Chiefs, but you can't convince me on the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm just not buying the Ravens. I also wonder about the health of Mark Andrews. He's been out for a little bit. They don't know. I mean, they don't know if he's bouncing back from that ankle surgery or not. I think he's a big factor for them, especially in the playoffs. Until I see Lamar do it in the playoffs, I'm just going to be hesitant. And we'll see the Ravens face off against the 49ers on Christmas Day, actually. So we'll get a little preview there. But I don't think there's an AFC team that I would take over any of those three teams in the NFC.
Now, is Mark Andrews out definitively?
So he's out right now. They don't know.
He's got the ankle injury.
Yeah, they don't know his status for the playoffs. They put him on IR, so he has to miss at least 4 weeks. I think we're in week 3 or 4 of that, but I don't know. They haven't been real specific about how much longer they think he's out besides that. So his status is really crucial to whether or not I think the Ravens are even in that neighborhood. Right.
Because I remember when he went down, it was a play that was kind of freaky looking near the goal line.
But if it's not the Ravens, I don't think it's anybody.
No, the Ravens are the only team right now that give me enough okay to say like it's you.
Yeah, the only other if the Bills caught a heater, maybe, because I think they have the talent, but they've been so up and down this year that I really don't know what to make of them. And that whole Sean McDermott thing is super weird up there as well. All right, coming up next, we will continue with some Hurrdat Hot Seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as KFOR in Lincoln. Don't forget to chime in on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876, or the YouTube channel as well. Those comments are off and popping as always. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up the show here on a Tuesday. We are live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. The YouTube channel popping off as always. We are live on YouTube, Twitter, and, of course, live over the air, as I mentioned. Continuing on a Hurrdat Hot Seat, Andrew, I believe it's your turn.
It is my turn, and my question to you is this. Excluding golf,
okay,
what professional sport would be more entertaining if players could drink while they play?
Ooh.
What would you like to see?
Okay.
In terms of drink and play?
So I think the answer is baseball. I think because
you know how hard that'd be.
It'd be really
hard to try to hit a Shohei Ohtani in 2025 98-mile-per-hour fastball.
But Shohei's drinking too. That's the key here. Is the pitchers are drinking.
Yeah, but we
too.
saw in bench warmers you can drink and play at least for a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of
I am 12.
I'm thinking of kind of the correlations to beer league softball here. I think trying to watch people play football or basketball drunk would just be ugly and not that entertaining. I think we'd have a lot of Kadarius Tonys happening where they don't know where they are. So I don't know how helpful that would be. Seems like the receivers for Kansas City have been playing drunk all year, and we've seen how that goes, and it's not great. Outside of the 4 major sports, I'm trying to think of something.
I actually think hockey would be pretty fun.
Oh, man, hockey's dangerous enough already. I don't want them drunk out there. Like
that's perfect, right? Because they're already hitting each other, and they're already a little bit wobbly in certain instances. And can you imagine like Connor McDavid on a breakaway, but he's a little tipsy, and he's going up against we'll just use this because it's a Blues reference. Jordan Binnington, who's like practically standing on his head because he's so drunk, and then you try to watch him dangle his way and score a goal. Like that'd be pretty fun to me.
Yeah,
they're coming off the bench and changes, and they're like hobbling over the boards because they're changing so quickly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm ready for it.
I don't know how fun that would be.
Think about a fight in hockey because they're allowed. It's like bar fights all the time.
I mean, if you'll go bar fight, just go boxing. I mean, it's like boxing or UFC.
That's not as fun though. It's not on skates.
Yeah, I don't need guys flying around on knives being drunk. Like I'm okay. I don't need to see that. Yeah, I think I go baseball. I want to see some beer league softball up at Major League Baseball, see what happens.
Heath asked if I've ever been to beer league hockey games. The late night games are rough. I have not been to any late night hockey games. I can just only imagine how rowdy it could get if you give hockey players some beer during the game.
Yeah, I don't know that's not the direction I want to go on that one. All right, let me ask you this one. So obviously been talking a lot of Nebraska, Kyle McCord.
So would you go WWE or anything like that?
No, he said sports, not television shows.
At first I was going to say, does WWE count as a sport? And thank goodness you went there before me, because now only people can get mad at you if they like WWE.
Listen, I'm not saying it's not physically challenging. I'm not saying that they don't get beat up. I'm saying it is literally entertainment television, not a sport.
Off the top rope, down to the keg. I mean, why not?
Shane, the Raiders are drunk every weekend.
I was going to say, Shane's been watching drunk football for the last
and I don't know if the Raiders are even
they're drunk on life.
I don't know that that's true. Okay, let me ask you a question here. A lot of quarterback talk today. A lot of Nebraska talk.
Riley Leonard commits to Notre Dame.
Yep, just throwing that in there too. We kind of anticipated that, but officially official now. If you are sitting there as a Nebraska fan, I can guarantee you 9 wins next year, or I can guarantee you Dylan Raiola, but there's no guarantee of wins. Which one are you taking?
I'll take the no guarantee.
You'll take
I'll
Raiola.
take the no guarantee.
How high would that number have to be before you passed on Raiola? Like, how many wins would I have to guarantee next year before you passed on Raiola?
Oh, man, that is a tough
Because if you choose the wins, Raiola goes somewhere else.
Right.
If you choose Raiola, you might still get the wins.
I would say you give me double-digit wins. You give me 10 wins next year, and I'd be cool with it, because 10 wins probably gets me into the college football playoff.
Next year, probably.
Next year.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm okay with passing on Raiola then is if Nebraska as a team were to get to 10 wins, you're probably going to get another 5-star in the portal because of the headway that you made with whoever you just had in the room. Let's just, for the example, say Kyle McCord was the one that slotted in and led Nebraska to 10 wins. And if there's another 5-star out there, whether he's in the portal or via recruiting in the 2025 class, then I'm cool. I'm cool with where I stand, because I'm probably getting that in return for my 10-win season. Does that make sense?
I understand where you're going there. Let me throw this situation out there for you, okay? So we have seen kind of what we're describing with Auburn a couple times, where they will come up, have a great year, and then kind of fall back to earth. Gene Chizik goes 8-5, 14-0, 8-5, 3-9, gets fired, right? That 14-0, that's the Cam Newton year. Okay, that's when they win the national championship. So we don't always see. Now, I think Nebraska's in a better position generally than Auburn because they aren't fighting with a juggernaut in-state and things like that. But the on-field success, and maybe this is a Gene Chizik problem specifically, but the on-field success doesn't always translate to, hey, let's keep this thing rolling. So that would be my concern with, I say, only 10 wins, but without guaranteeing something, because if you get to like 11 or 12, you're probably pretty close to guaranteeing like a conference championship or something like that. I think I would need some sort of hardware to justify, because if you get Dylan Raiola, you've got at least 3 years of 5-star quarterback play.
Right. But I still think you could get a Dylan Raiola if you get to that 10-win season mark and you get to the college football playoff. But I mean, and knowing what I know from this staff and how they recruit, they're not Gene.
They aren't, right? That's fair. So that's where I think I'd have to go higher. I think I'd have to go higher than 10 for me to pass up on Raiola. I think I need more.
It's fair to say that too. But if there's a baseline of 10 wins, a college football playoff appearance with those 10 wins, and what I know Nebraska could then get in terms of recruiting because of the position of power they're in as a university, I'll take it. I'll take it.
This is a dramatically different conversation this year versus next year, because this year 10 wins get you nothing. 10 wins get you Louisville.
Right.
10 wins get you Missouri. 10 wins get you nothing.
Yep.
Next
10
year,
wins get you ranked 9 in the country this year.
Next year, 10 wins likely get you in the playoff. So that it is a very different question this year versus next year. All right, your turn.
All right, my last question for you today is this. If you could go back and relive one day in your life without changing anything about it, which day would you revisit?
That's a tricky one. My first thought was, let's go back to yesterday and have all the Dylan Raiola news break and get Gifford and Benhart back. No. If I could relive one day of my life. So this is kind of tricky because like I think the cheesy answer would be to be like, oh, like my wedding day or
see,
whatever.
And so I was thinking too, like the right answer would probably be the day I got engaged or something.
Sure.
Take that out of it. Take a day like that out of it.
So more like a normal
Give me
day.
a more of like not even just normal, but obscure day.
Sure. So I will say just real quick on the wedding thing, often that's not like a super fun day for you. Like it's like,
oh, great. Something to look forward to.
It can be stressful.
Oh, no. Thanks, Ravi. No, appreciate it.
I mean, it's fun. No, don't get me wrong. No, but it can be stressful, right? There's a lot going on. You have a lot of people. There's a lot of moving parts. So I don't even know, even if you didn't take that off the table, and I know it was super stressful for my wife. So I don't even know if you took that off the table, didn't take it off the table. I still may not choose it. Man, that's a really tough question.
So for me, I'll go.
Yeah, do you have one?
When the Blues won the Stanley Cup in 2019, I was on the radio, like for a reaction show in the market of St. Louis, on the ESPN affiliate that I worked for only part-time, but I was doing a Stanley Cup weekly show. And so I got to watch the game in the studio. I wasn't around like family and friends or anything, but I was watching in studio with one of my best friends, and we went on the air right after they won their first ever Stanley Cup. The buildup of the day was just incredible because you knew what was ahead of you. You knew I knew where I was going to be, and then getting to talk to all of the big names in the market that are old heads, like 50 to 70-year-old men and women who have yet to experience a moment like this. And I'm doing it at the age of, we'll just say 21. And I'm hosting a radio show for 2 hours after as recapping that day in the season. That was it for me.
Ooh, I would
go back and do it again.
That's a really, really good one.
You know what I would choose?
Go for it.
The first day the three of us had a show on the air together.
Aww.
I think I might pick in terms of recent history when
I wish I could give up that day, Shane.
When Creighton clinched the Big East regular season title against Seton Hall in 2020. That was a super fun day.
Okay.
That was a great day. Hopefully we got great days coming up for Nebraska. Let's get some 5-star quarterbacks, people.
Yeah, let's get some
commits.
Some pen to paper.
Yeah, I want signage. Let's go. More Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.